Hello everybody, my name is Alpha Wookie, and welcome back to another video. Before we get into it, I'd just like to say, I hope you're having a good day, morning, evening, night, twilight, summer solstice, or whatever time it is for you when you're watching the video. If you're not, it better stop right now.
Howdy everybody, my name is Alpha Wookie, and welcome back to another Horizon TCG Showcase. I have not said that since 2018. 4 years. And all that time, I've never stopped working on Horizon TCG. I think the only reason that I've never posted any videos about the card game is not because there wasn't a card game to talk about, it's just because the development was in utter chaos. And I could make a whole video series on the development of Horizon TCG. That would take episodes upon episodes. This is 4 years of development. But Horizon TCG is not the Horizon TCG of 2018. And the reason that is what I want in a card game, what I want in my trading card game is a lot different than what Alpha Wookie wanted in 2018. And I'm trying to deliver that feeling that I'm looking for in a card game, in this card game. And I feel like I finally cemented exactly what Horizon TCG is supposed to be. So, welcome to How to Play Horizon, the trading card game. My card game is a game about claiming your kingdom's freedom from the rule of oppressive and tyrannical gods. There are 5 factions that struggle against these gods: Primal, Inferno, Ether, Flow, and Storm. These identities are each unique, and that makes their playstyles different from one another. So, how do we play? To win the game, you have to cast monsters and spells to attack your opponent and put cards into your damage zone. You trigger this damage zone to deal damage to your opponent. Once your opponent's life is reduced from 30 to 0, you win the game. First, we'll take a look at our monster cards. As you can see, each card has a name, a cost, a damage value, a sword value, called its force, a shield value, called its will, and its typing. So how do we play these monsters? First, you need the right type of mana. Each card can cost specific and non-specific mana, and you need to pay those costs to cast a monster. As you can see, on this monster, there are 2 parts of the cost. The gray represents the non-specific mana. You can pay this mana with any type of mana. And the right-hand side represents specific mana. You must pay this mana with Inferno mana. Mana is created at the start of your turns, equal to the amount of cards in your altar in the color of those cards. This colored or specific mana stays in your mana area until the beginning of your next turn. At the beginning of each of your turns, colored mana disappears before new colored mana is made. If any of that mana is unspent when you make new mana, you also make a colorless. Colorless mana stays in this zone until it is spent. If you're wondering how to get cards onto your altar, you can play a card from your hand once a turn before combat on each of your turns. Think of it like playing a land for turn in Magic the Gathering. Once your monsters are summoned, they can do nothing. A monster has summoning sickness the turn it is summoned. A monster loses that summoning sickness at the beginning of your next turn. An active monster can do 2 things during combat: attack or block. An attacking monster exhausts and either attacks your opponent or attacks a blocking monster. If there are blocking monsters, your monsters must attack those monsters before you can attack your opponent. A blocking monster exhausts and must be attacked by your opponent before they can attack you. When you attack your opponent's blocking monsters, your monsters deal damage to each other equal to their shield values. When a monster takes damage, its shield value, or will, reduces by that much, making it weaker. When a monster takes enough damage to reduce its will to 0, it is destroyed and moved to the dead zone. Damage is healed at the end of each turn. When a monster hits your opponent, this is when you use their sword value, or their force. You flip cards from the top of your deck into your damage zone for each sword value your monster has. Your damage zone is how you deal damage to your opponent. To deal damage, you may trigger your damage zone by exhausting all cards in it and adding up the damage values of all the cards exhausted this way. The combined number is how much damage that trigger does to your opponent's life total. Once those cards are triggered, they move to your dead zone. You may do this once a turn. Your damage zone can hold up to 6 cards, and you may trigger your damage zone at any time on your turn, even in response to cards flipping into it. For instance, if cards were to flip into your damage zone and there are no empty slots, don't worry about it. You can trigger in response, deal damage to your opponent, and open up slots for the remaining damage that's coming its way towards the damage zone. But if cards would flip into your damage zone and there are no empty slots and you have no way to make room, all cards unable to find a spot are sent to the burn zone.
Oh no!
The burn zone is an area that cards go to and cannot be retrieved from no matter what. I don't exactly have anywhere else to put this, but because of the way the damage zone works, you're flipping a lot of cards from the top of your deck and eventually putting them into your dead zone, and this can cause milling out to be something that's really easy. If you ever mill out, this isn't the end of the game. You simply shuffle your dead zone into your deck, but before you do anything else with your deck, you take the top 10 cards of your deck and you put them into the burn zone. So eventually, if you do run into a scenario where you have no cards left to draw and everything else you own is in the burn zone, at that point you will have successfully milled out and ended the game in your opponent's favor. So do keep that in mind. I've known for a while that I've wanted to incorporate some sort of card flipping idea into Horizon, and I feel like this is the perfect way to have done it. I was open up to this kind of idea by learning how to play other card games the past couple of years. Card games like Oversoul and the new Digimon card game, or even this board game where you play as one of the famous Godzilla kaiju. They all use card flipping mechanics or things like that to represent how damage is done, and I knew right off the bat that that was something I wanted Horizon to be. A game of Horizon is played with a deck of at least 40 cards. You start each game of Horizon with 5 cards in hand. You can mulligan poker style. Afterwards, you and your opponent play a card onto your altar, and your turn starts as normal. Note that because you put a card into your altar before the start of your first turn, you make 1 mana at the beginning of your very first turn. Afterwards, the turn orders go as following. The beginning of your turn is called your reset. Your cards on exhaust, you make new mana, and you draw. When drawing, you may draw 2 from your deck, or 1 card from your damage zone. Afterwards, you have your play phase. This is when you may play cards onto your altar, summon monsters, and cast spells. By the way, spells can be cast at any time on any turn, so keep that in mind that you and your opponent's cards are always at instant speed. Next is your combat phase, where you can attack and defend. Finally, there's your end turn phase, where all will values return to normal, and if you have more than 5 cards in your hand, you discard down to that number. Afterwards, your opponent's turn starts. Remember, your goal on each of your turns is to fill up and trigger your damage zone and reduce your opponent's HP to 0. There are a lot of things that I haven't exactly covered in this video that I feel like are more appropriate when I start covering other factions. For instance, your starting life total can never go above 30. This is kind of important when you play life gain, but I haven't exactly discussed anything like that yet. There are also multiple symbols besides the damage value that can be included at the top left-hand corner of each card. All of these things pertain to the damage zone, but a lot of them are pretty specific to some of the factions, so I'll save that for another video. Until then, this was how to play Horizon TCG. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Deuces!